everyone to the Triple Threat Podcast, episode 2. Today I'll be joined with my other host, Billy Webster the third. Bill, say what's up to them. Alrighty, so as you can see from the title, we're gonna mainly discuss the Jimmy Butler trade rumors and some other content. But before doing that, let's start off with the opening tip. Now, B-Web, what is your opening tip for the day? Mm, I feel it. I feel it. I guess my opening tip for the day is I guess it is to be prepared to get what you give. If you're giving 100% effort, you should put yourself to the standard that hey, I need to receive 100% effort. You know, I so that's all I gotta say about that. Now, all right, so yeah, you get what you're given exactly. All right, now you fucked up. Hey, you go. You give what you yeah. I was just gonna start us off with the intro to the actual stuff. So, alright. So, in case you did not hear, um, a news report broke Wednesday afternoon, and it was Jimmy Butler trying to force himself out of another situation. This time, it being Minnesota. With it, he dropped three teams that he potentially wants to go to. Those teams being the LA Clippers, the New York Knicks, and then the Brooklyn Nets. Now, Bill, is there any teams on there that surprise you, or any teams on there that surprises you that's not on there? I guess just to say. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I agree with you in the sense that, like, I was also surprised that LA was definitely not on that list. Um, just for the stamp, like just because it's like again what you talk about with the Clippers, it's a big market, but it's like the premier team in that big market. So, um, but I think I think with what you were saying, like I just don't think he would mesh well down there. And I think that's almost like the exact same reason why I didn't think Paul George going to the Lakers was necessarily a good idea too, because I just didn't know how that mesh would be. Um, and honestly, on that list, I think I'm just kind of surprised, like not only with the Nets, the Nets, because the Nets is an interesting case itself, just because you have young talent there, but what are you gonna get moved for? You know? Yeah. So and the same thing is said with the Clippers. The Clippers really don't have the pieces to even I think even trade for to a superstar like Jimmy Butler. I was gonna say exactly. I feel like the one player that has to get moved in that trade is Tobias Harris. And then so I'm over here using the 2K trade final. I made a little league with the Minnesota Timberwolves, just kind of looking at offers. Um, obviously they're not what would go through, but One that is offered is Jimmy Butler for Tobias Harris and Patrick Beverly. Now, I think with this trade, I feel like I agree with you. I feel like Minnesota would probably try to swing to get Avery Bradley, just because you need a replacement at that two position. Because looking at Minnesota's roster, the only other two guards they have on that team is C.J. Williams and then Josh Okogie. Um, and that is without Tyus Jones playing the two for you as the second point guard. You know, d- yeah, and it lies a lot with that two position outside of Butler. Um, if yeah, 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 yeah. I totally agree with you, and I feel like another team that's exactly like that before Giannis, because I think Giannis changed the culture of that team a lot, was Milwaukee. I felt Milwaukee was very much like that. Memphis is very much like that now. Um, and then I would even argue Utah and Sacramento to an extent. Um, but yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Um, it's just with the team, like at the core of it, on paper, like you should have had a pretty solid. If everything was gonna mesh, this team was gonna be pretty solid. Um, you know, you have some holes. You have holes. I mean, every NBA team has holes. At the end of the day, I think um, Minnesota's is interesting to look at because for me personally, the big hole that they have, in my opinion, is they don't really have a true. They don't have a quality full. I guess a quality full. Yeah, they have Taj Gibson, um, and backing him up with Anthony Tolliver, who Tolliver is a solid face up for, um, coming over from Detroit. But I personally would not want Tosh Gibson or Anthony Tolliver at their points of their career right now, both at the age of 33, being my starting four. Especially with how athletic the fours are getting now. Because, yeah, 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 exactly. Um, and I think having Gibson out there with this lineup, I also think it hurts some of the floor spacing a bit. Um, well, this is obviously if with Jimmy Butler included with this. Um, but looking at percentages last season, Jimmy Butler shot 35% from three. Carl Anthony Towns shot 42. Wiggins shot 33, and Teague shot 36. So, on average, your three-point shooting at that team is just around 30, like high 35s, 36s. So, you're obviously not a great shooting team already. I felt like Bejelinka, Namja Bejelinka, the former four that they had, I felt like he might have been nice to hold on, and even if he had to just fill a couple games at that full position until you really find someone like solid, someone solid to play that position, then no, you're good. Yeah, yeah, Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. So I feel like out of all the teams that he listed, if Minnesota is cooperative in this trade and they and they find the right move, I feel like he gets moved um for Tobias Harris and probably a pick. Um, and then that I think that works both ways. You know, you have a player trying to force himself out with Jimmy Butler. In my mind, if I was Minnesota, I'd look at Tobias Harris. If I could swing Bradley, I'd swing Bradley. To do that though, you probably have to dump a contract. So you might, in that case, you might have to dump Goshi Deng's contract or um, Goshi Deng has a pretty high contract for this team. Wiggins is untouchable. I feel like right now Wiggins is untouchable. The only two untouchables in your organization is Towns and Wiggins. Um, I think Jeff Teague might also be. Wouldn't be surprising to see Teague potentially moved with Butler if they could somehow swing um, both both Harris and Avery Bradley and one of their picks. Um, and then if another trade was made with the Clippers, um, I could definitely see a package with the Clippers kind of be centered around Gallinari if it's not Tobias Harris. Yeah, yeah, yeah. hmm And then no, I was gonna say another thing to look at with that is that just helps the team. That would also help Minnesota's just overall three throw shooting. Why they weren't terrible last year at three throw shooting. Um, you know, you had a starter out there. You had two starters for them out there shooting below 75%. Wiggins shot 64 from the free throw line. So, so I think definitely if you do move for Gallinari, he's a 93%. He was a 93% shooter in LA. You know, and then in his on career, he's an 86% shooter. Um, and that's with two really bad years in Denver early in his career. Well, I guess Denver, New York, um, in his career. But I feel like Gallinari is with how the league is now. I think that $21 million mark for him is relatively solid. Just because he's a consistent scorer. You know, last year, you know, he had a dip in numbers overall, 39% shooting from the field, and then 32 from the 3 point line. But you have to look at his production in Denver, where he's that 44% shooter, that 41% shooter, and clipping almost 38% from the 3 point line. Yeah, 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 yeah. And I find it really I was just gonna, I find it really interesting that this whole situation's happening in the first place. Um, because I figured, because obviously, when he first got there, there's definitely, there was definitely conversations. He was very open about him not meshing with Wiggins and Carl Anthony Towns, who are basically, who's going to be the centerpieces of this team. Um, but I figured with Tom Thibodeau in there, I felt like he would, kind of mellow out a bit, just mesh with it. I felt like they would have worked something out there. Uh, yeah, yeah. No, I was gonna say like the whole reason why he pushed his way of out of Chicago is because his disdain for Fred Hoiberg. You know, so I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see. Um, in Cleveland, in LA, I'm not sure how long the leash for Doc Rivers is gonna be. In LA, so that's gonna be something to look out for. Um, yeah, swing that trade. Yeah, yeah, hmm yeah, yeah, hmm hmm yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and then going back to your statement about the coaches, about how they just I feel like they stay in a place for too long. Like look at how many great coaches are are relatively new to teams. Like look at Houston and the fact and Mike D'Antoni. Like D'Antoni is showing why he's one of the greatest offensive minds in the game right now, from the coach's perspective. And this is coming off, and that in his current play is coming off of tenure in New York, which was just riddled with a bunch of you know ups and downs to some extent. So that's gonna be something interesting, seeing him reunited with Carmelo Anthony. Um, that's gonna be fun. Um, so the Clippers was the first place to discuss the potential move. I want to discuss. I kind of want to swing over to the New York Knicks and talk about what might have to happen for the Knicks. So, you, yeah, yeah, no, yeah, 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 yeah. No, totally. And I think, you know, I just don't think New York has enough outside of Knox and Porzingis. I don't think they have enough to even really swing an interesting offer. Um, because I think the only position that Minnesota really needs outside of the four is probably a one. And that's and that for even for the trade for a one, you would need someone who puts you in a better position right now than Jeff Teague, and someone who puts you in a better position 5 years from now than Tyus Jones. You know, so really the only person who I would even try to touch on that Knicks team personally, outside of Kevin Knox, is probably Porzingis. And if I'm the Knicks, I'm not even considering any trade offers for Porzingis. Hang up the phone. Yeah, you know, and I felt like even if somehow they swing that, like, oh, like if New York is open to move Porzingis, like if this is Phil Jackson's Knicks, and they're like, yeah, we can move Porzingis, I feel like Minnesota would then have to throw in too many resources. I feel like that would probably be like two first round picks and like two like unprotected and then like a protected like second or something. Like it'd be a ridiculous offer. Um, yeah, yeah. Would you would you go Butler and Wiggins? Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I totally agree with you. So personally, I feel like what you could see here, honestly, is if something happens with the Knicks, I feel like it's him signing in free agency. And I feel like to do that, to sign him in free agency, I feel like they don't resign. They cannot resign Enes Kanter. I feel like, I feel like so. I feel like if that happens, the only way they can keep Kanter is if they move Courtney Lee. Yeah. So, mhm. Yeah. Well, then I mean, looking at Kanter, you know, he's coming off of a pretty solid year for New York, 14-11 player, which that's a very solid stat line. Um, I think something that might be just a little disconcerting, for the Knicks fans, is he only attempted two threes all year, didn't hit one in 71 games. So, which I feel like we're slowly transforming into a league where the five, like, if the if basically if the five's gonna be a pure post score, then I feel like eventually you're gonna get outgunned. I feel like is eventually the league we're gonna be turning into. But that 14.1 for Cantor is the second highest. It's the third highest in his career. The rebound at 11 points, 11 rebounds per game is the highest, um, by a decent margin as well. So that's something to look at. Um, if Cantor, I feel like if Cantor is rebounding as well as he did last year, then I feel like he definitely has to get considered somewhat to coming back and pairing him up with Porzingis, who's not. While Porzingis has tremendous like inside out game, the one thing I wouldn't really say Porzingis is great at is boarding up. Um, but Another thing that's gonna have to happen this year is
the
Porzingis is gonna have to get
the
paid.
mix that you put into the boil, because then it makes it like spawn these little infested bosses, which were really fun to fight,
Yeah.
but
So,
gross hard.
yeah. So I was just looking at this. Porzingis is this is the last year of his rookie deal.
Really,
So going
I
into
thought he was
20,
last year would be
2019 free agency, you have to
semi-serious.
basically offer him max. Or sign him to an extension.
Yeah, exactly. I'm falling behind on my master rank. Like I'm not getting as much because I'm like stalling on weapons because I'm trying to like craft higher weapons of things. So like I'm
Yeah.
crafting ones that I already have mastery ranked.
Yeah.
If that
And
makes
then
kind of
I feel
sense.
like yeah. No, no, my bad. Go keep going, keep going. I all good. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I would say if you know if you bring Kyrie
Yeah.
into the equation,
Armor,
um, then
armor thought.
I feel like another thing that they have to do is they have to buy out Joakim
One
Noah
of our team members, armor thought.
because Joakim's getting 18.
The boils over to the left there.
Yeah,
Oh god, I hate accidentally
no,
walking out of it. I keep thinking E is the right turn, but it's
yeah,
not.
and there's not that many teams that actually have the cap to take it.
I hear that. I don't
Like
know what it
the
is.
only team that, yeah, yeah. So I don't know. So the Knicks, I think that, but then I look at my trades and I have Rain Ellington. I somehow have Rain Ellington always on my team. Um, so that leads us to the third target that he talked about, the Brooklyn Nets.
The first
And I
target.
feel like the Nets is a very similar situation where he would have to sign in free
Oh
agency
my god, open it. Do it.
because the only player on that the two because for me if I'm Minnesota, I have to get two players from them or at least one in a very good pick. And the players that I'm going to be looking to get are going to be D'Lo and Rondae Salas Jefferson. Maybe Jared Allen. I feel like at the I feel like if you somehow trade for Jared Allen, you know the potential he has, then you are giving up on Gorgie Dang and the Justin Patton project. Didn't really end D'Lo.
You do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Dinwiddie is a very interesting like player just kind of look at because he has been one of the better point guards in the league the past. You know, last year like
If
he
nobody
basically just kind of emerged out
starts
of
getting
nowhere.
picked, it'll be a
You
really
know,
easy one.
having a 12-6
It's the same
season,
every time. The
which
other
is
team
very
picks
solid
someone, it
as
goes seventh.
mainly as basically he was signed to be a
People are
backup point
sleeping on my
guard. You
first
know,
person record
then
player
eventually
right now.
D'Lo
It's
got
Butler.
injured.
It
You
was
know, so he had to end up starting 58
I was like
games.
3,000 standing, but I was only able to get 1,000 out of
Um,
it.
Yeah, he played in 80 games last year, so he's a reliable player. And the great thing is the Nets have him on a 1.66 million dollar deal.
I totally believe him. He's talking about
Yeah,
doing
no, totally.
massive
Like
contracts.
next year when he hits free agency at the age of 26, I feel like Dinwiddie is going to be getting
No,
4 years,
I
44
I
at the
have a
very
hard
least,
time disagreeing with that.
just with how the contracts have
But
been.
probably I usually just watch it like Sunday afternoon once I'm done with my homework. So now we get
Yeah,
into this thing.
which I
Fun
don't blame him.
fact: they really
Now
bought
that now I'm gonna
Butler.
actually
Where
step
are you
away from
supposed to
that
be
and let's
playing
actually take a
on
look at that.
as
What do you
Boss is
think
really
the
cool,
Dinwiddie trade
but I don't know if we'll
to
see
the
it
Thunder to the Phoenix? Because I feel like that's an
because
amazing trade.
nobody's put in any catalyst or coaxes.
Yeah, yeah.
Just means you got to get good.
I was gonna say Chris. I was gonna say Chris. Yeah,
Liam, stand still. Liam, stand still.
yeah,
Stand still. All right. Don't stop moving. I mean, don't move until. Okay.
yeah.
I mean, that's fine, I guess. You only got a third of the possible amount I could have put on you.
A protected
I
force
was
for
I
Dinwiddie.
said
That's.
in the
I feel like.
parlay.
I feel like that might be a lot, especially if you have Bendo in a deal. I
I
feel
said
like
don't
personally, if
stop
you move
moving.
Bendo in the trade, I feel like it's Bendo in a second for
All right,
Dinwiddie.
Liam, stop moving.
I would bite on that. I would take it.
They don't matter right now.
Yeah,
Only this matters.
but
Oh no, no. Yeah, go 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 go
really,
go 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 go. Oh,
no.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, no.
Which do you want to
That I
use?
totally agree with you on that one. But then I feel like Dinwiddie trade.
I wonder if we should
I'm
revoke
gonna
Tatum
look
for
to
Graham
move
for the fact that he hasn't
Dragon Bendo.
played in
If they don't
over
buy
2 years.
Bendo, I think I feel like Wakan Holmes, who they just signed to a 1 year deal, could potentially be moved to the 25-year-old center.
What?
Um, and if you're desperate for Dinwiddie, then I think Mikal Bridges' name might be thrown around.
That was Brandon and Liam. They did the motions. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
The bamboo stones.
yeah, man. I know for a fact that if the Nets somehow could get a two guard like that, like him and Chaos Laval, like are basically the same people.
Yeah.
So, like, I know. A nice,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. I don't know
yeah,
Asher's abilities very well. I I'm building
yeah,
the normal Asher. Yeah.
yeah. The only issue with
Oh, I thought it was a girl. Yeah.
currently with I feel like with Brooklyn is
Is
they have the young talent, but they have young talent in very similar positions. So our shooting guard they have Chaos Laval, Joe Harris, and Alan
Halo
Crabb.
mentality.
You know, who Joe Harris Joe Harris is he just signed for 2 years 16 million. Alan Crabb is on the last year of his deal that was given to him by Portland. So I feel like
So to
if
James
anyone
Harden's
was
wage
were to be
expectancy.
if anyone were to be like re-signed, like not to be re-signed when the contract would be over, I feel like it would be Alan Crabb. Um, which I love Alan Crabb, so that would hold me that helps me to say. Uh, yeah, he it was. Um, and then going back to the year that that trade was made, you know, he was. It came off of two campaigns. Um, I believe it was. When was that? When was that contract given? Yeah,
Oh yeah, I
yeah,
figured that out my first mission as well because like one of my guys picked me up 3 consecutive times and then he was like, "Don't stand on it. It does very high
yeah,
toxic damage to you if you're any if if you're flying
yeah,
above it or touching it, it will deal very high toxic damage."
yeah, yeah. Looking at the 2016-2017 season, he had 10 points off the bench, which is amazing. that coming off of 46% shooting. You know, like he was shooting 40, 46, 44, 84, which is a very solid stat line coming off that bench. Um, Looking at Karis LeVert, he averaged 12 points last year. Alan Crabb averaged 13 last year.
Destroyed shooting
Um,
guards.
so I feel like having the abundance of shooting guards isn't terrible. Um, because I feel like Honus Jefferson can play the four, or they can play smaller lineups. Um, Someone who I think is interesting with that team is on the second unit you have Damari Carroll,
See, that's
um,
the thing. When you
who
look at
last
it, it's
season put up career
that's like
highs
my first question. It's literally like
with
what
13 and a
what's the first
half
mission you put them on
on
second unit? It's
41% shooting.
it's literally like endless waves of enemies with like these really
Uh,
big bosses, and it was really
whether
cool.
that just
I wish we can
whether that was
I
just
wish we
from
can get
the
it
amount of
more
shots he
frequently.
had to take for them, off that second unit or not. Um, but he still had solid production. So um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Though the thing with it is, though I think something that's interesting to note though is KO did start 72 games for them for the Nets. Yeah, 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 yeah. And then I think another name that fits right into the conversation is the four for Brooklyn, Kenneth Fareed, who with the Kenneth Fareed, that adds a whole different element. And I think,
Yeah, well,
like, the thing that's sad to me about
he
Kenneth
should have.
Fareed, I feel like he is
No,
a
he's
tremendous
already had
person,
enough to get too
a
much
very
hate now.
solid player.
You have to talk to
But
him.
I just feel like what you're seeing now is just a transition of the game. The athletic, undersized power forward who's focusing on rebounding is just not the move anymore. For Yeah, like Millsap. Yeah,
Everything you have right now should be fine,
yeah,
but the first one you need to talk to Macac in order to turn the mask dealer. Did you understand all that?
yeah, yeah. So, man, that boy was trending. That boy was a lot of fun to watch.
Evaluation of this event.
Man, and it's interesting, like how different, like even like talking about those positions, like how different like Fareed's game is to like a Julius Randle. Well, Julius Randle, even though he's not necessarily doesn't necessarily stretch the floor like Fareed does, he still has some offensive game. So where he's able to step outside to that 3 point line, and while he's not necessarily a threat from deep, you know, only shooting 22% from threes, 25% of his
Yeah, he's a
career,
massive deep.
he can be out there, in the corner. If he chucks up four, he's gonna hit one, based off statistics. But even so, what he could do is he's perfectly pass to the corner and then to have cut, especially with players like Anthony
I
Davis,
just got confused on
um,
the level of the thing.
you know, just players um, out there that complement that style of play.
Fast travel.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I agree with you. And then even if Randall, if that game's not working for Randall,
Yes.
you know, you have Miocic also coming off the bench for them for the
Like
Pelicans. So Miocic, provides a little bit of stretch to this
for
to the
sure, going
team,
that deep is efficient.
which is nice when the 2 points you have on the team are True
It's a
Holiday,
lot.
who has an okay 3 point shot, 33%. But when your second point guard is Alfred Payton,
No, it's 3,000
on that
points.
second unit,
I mean,
having
that's not
shooters like
bad. It
Miocic,
means you can get like at the
um,
hard level, they're starting average
is pretty
30,
solid.
which isn't bad at all.
Um,
I'm ready to go back in
so
for.
honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Davis and Randall on the court the majority of the night, because I feel like their games could complement each other's. Um, well,
The mods are okay, but
well,
I just gotta
on
see
that,
how far
both.
available it is.
Well, both players are players you can't really give space to, but for different reasons. As Randall is gonna take it in on you, like you give him like a little bit of space off of like a little pop, and he'll drive like right into you. While Davis, give him space off that pop, he's gonna pull a mid range jump shot in your face.
It's 10 days after today,
Yeah, the Pelicans
or
are.
9 more after today.
No, you're good. Yeah, hell yeah. Who? And that's still dope. That is dope,
Exactly. Yeah.
man.
Two of them are. There's two
Uh,
regular ones and two staff ones.
so
I think.
overall consensus on the Jimmy Butler situation.
I think it's
Um,
yeah. It's the
I
same.
think
I've
we
got the
both
same.
agreed. If a trade was going to be made, the most
Yeah, you
likely
can make a
candidate
case for the
would
same.
be the Clippers out of the teams he listed. But I feel like after
They're
talking, I
very
feel like
good.
New York is probably the most likely to sign him as a free agent. Uh, now, now what we're going to do is I'm going to use 2K Trade Final, and it's going to give me 19 deals, and I want to talk
Yeah,
through
just get
some of the
the
notable
matchup.
ones with you, B Web. And if you were GMs for either teams, you know, if you edited the trade a little bit, what could potentially happen with it. So the uh, so the first one I see that that is noteworthy to me is Jimmy Butler for the Hawks first round pick, top three protected for John Collins. I feel like I feel like this is a very solid trade. If that Hawks pick is instead of top three protected, if it's top 10 protected. No, not to, if it's. I feel like you would have to mess around with the protections to basically give Minnesota the best odds. Because essentially, the whole point of this trade, the whole piece of this trade, is John Collins. Is that first round pick? John Collins is a luxury. Looking at that team, Prince could be on there. Tyron Waller Prince could be on there. Um, I feel like it's too early to put Trey Young on there, but he might be a name, potentially to think about. Outside of those players, I don't think there's enough. Ooh, actually, I think I might just have to do a league with Atlanta because these guys are young. This is an interesting team. There's gonna be growing pains for sure. Um, but I feel like that could be something solid. But I feel like that would have to be a guaranteed first round pick if I'm biting. Yeah. I feel like he is. I feel like he combines to be a little overrated because I feel like while his offense is good, I just feel while his defense is great, I don't feel like he's that developed offensively. Um, while he was, while last year he did, he was showing off, the finishing ability, and efficiency at 47% shooting. I just feel like that's coming off of a situation where he's not putting up as many shots per game. Um, it's weird. Yeah, he's a great story for sure. Um, so another trade that appears on this is Jimmy Butler and Keita Bates Diop, which that player probably could just be anyone on the roster, making a league min. So that could also be Patton if you need to, James Nunnally. But the trade is for Kemba Walker and Jeremy Lamb. I feel like if I'm
That all sounds good.
Charlotte, I'm okay with moving Kemba, but I feel like I have to keep Jeremy Lamb
I'm muted.
because the Hornets have the Hornets have already expressed interest, have basically already said if the right offer comes their way, Kemba is gonna get moved. They basically already, with the way that they've been doing business, I feel like they've been implying that. I feel like
Yeah,
Jeremy
I still want to
Lamb,
get to the
I feel
roster though,
like
sitting on the
he
first
is,
table.
I feel like he has enough talent to where he can make a pretty solid backcourt if the Hornets are invested in him and Malik Monk. Um,
The size and Warframe are usually one-handed,
yeah,
and I'm definitely gonna
yeah,
pick
I feel like
Warframe
that's
here.
way too good to be true. Um, I feel like what could be more realistic
I mean,
is
yeah,
Lamb and maybe Batum, and then at that point, you know, Batum really isn't the player he was in Portland anymore, which kind of sucks. Because when he was in Portland, he was that Portland team was very
yeah.
interesting
Besides
to
getting all the
watch,
things you need to
at
win,
to
but
say the very least. Um, so yeah, I feel like overall, I feel like the Charlotte trade, I feel like it's solid. I just don't think it would happen. Another trade that I feel that's interesting um, is again, there's another player here. 2K is suggesting Luau Deng going in this trade. I don't think that would ever happen in a million years because this trade is between the Lakers and the T Wolves. Basically, I'm gonna disregard Luau Deng. He appeared in this episode. Congratulations to you guys. But essentially, the pieces in this trade is Jimmy Butler for Brandon Ingram and KCP, which I could potentially see Ingram on this. I don't think KCP per se. I feel like if I am the T Wolves, I would try to somehow make it where I get Josh Hart. But
yep.
yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, no, I agree with you. Um, I feel like I agree with you. I feel like if this offer were to be sent to Minnesota, I feel like if you could negotiate, money is a big deal with it. So if you could somehow throw Hart in the deal and then maybe give up another prospect on your team and maybe a second pick, like maybe if you have to give up Tyus Jones in a second, the Miami second for Josh Hart, then I feel like you might go through it. Um, Actually, when I tried to do that on the game, um, Lil Deng's still part of this. Lil Deng probably would not be in it. It'd probably be in like James Nunnally more than likely. Um, the offer that I get brought up is LA getting 2 second round picks, but Minnesota getting that first, the Lakers unprotected first, which I'm not sure. Really, just so the trade essentially would be Jimmy Butler, Tyus Jones, in two
It's how you level
and
up.
2 second round, and James Nunnally in 2 second round picks for Brandon Ingram, KCP, Josh Hart, and LA's first. I feel like that's a lot.
First boss, first boss.
Um,
Look at the boil. Look at that
all right,
guy coming out of the
so
boil.
let's look at. So I think it's just too much for Jimmy Butler to get for Jimmy Butler.
That's sweet.
Um, a trade. It's so weird. Now, a trade that I think would be interesting to see is Jimmy Butler for Evan Fournier and Magic's overall pick, first round pick, just straight up. I feel like if this offer is there and you have to move Butler, I feel like this is a great offer
Let's
because
build it.
I
Because we didn't put
like
anything
if it
for
comes
him,
down
this
to
is
it,
really easy.
you get a
Just
young
make
shooter,
sure you have the
a
hemocytes
young solid shooter,
bigger.
and the Magic's first round pick, which is probably gonna be top three
A crafted
realistically.
statue for the dojo with enough systole.
Which at that point, like that's relatively similar to what, like it's on a smaller scale, obviously, than that Chris Dunn deal, but you know,
You
like
get
those
one
those would be
perfect,
like similar key
like that's
components.
the thing. If
So
you
I
get
feel
one
like
every like
this
25
is a
million years,
solid
second
last
round,
ditch
second
effort.
round.
Like
The
talking to
cool thing
Magic
too
to the
is
Orlando
the
trying to get
second
that first
each of
round
the
pick.
three heads have like a little weak point, like where their mouth would be. Just fire at that. They're not really that bad
Yeah,
unless it's on the harder difficulty. Then it's really fun.
yeah, yeah. Now a trade that I want to talk about, though I don't see it happening, actually is with the Trailblazers, and it involves the backcourt. But it does not involve Damian Lillard. It involves CJ McCollum,
Oh, I guess a third was
and
possible.
it essentially be a straight up swap of Butler for McCollum. I don't like that. It's. I feel like it would be interesting. I feel like now, if Portland were to do that, they would also lose. They would basically, it'd almost be a $5 million dump as well. Um, um, but I feel like that could be something that you look at. Um, I feel like if you are okay with basically if you're Portland and you're okay with blowing up what you have now just because you feel like you're just
We've
grown
done it before
stagnant,
apparently.
then I feel like this
Another
could be a
art
decent deal.
material.
If I'm if I'm Minnesota, I'm accepting it hands down. Cause yeah,
Also
cause
an effective
you get a
trade.
player for 2 more years after this year. Yeah, I do a lot too. Yeah, They really do. And if Portland has a mediocre year, which now, do you know how crazy it would have been if Portland somehow would have been able to, like in the mid rounds, like snag Michael Porter Jr., which I want to, I forget if I feel like the, I feel like I want to say the, I want to say Portland didn't have their pick in the draft this year. They did. They did. They have Simmons at 24. No, I think it was someone else's. I, it might be their pick. I think 24 sounds about right for them.
Oh, jeez, I didn't even
Because
know it
that
at the
would be, that
time.
would take them to like second round, about.
I didn't even know that at
But
the time. I'll be
yeah, I
honest.
completely forgot about Afreen Simmons. Um, yeah. Um,
Must be
now,
nice.
I'm blanking. Where is he from again? Is he's not from France? Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like the well-known one there. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
With
Which
whatever we got from this, I think I'll get some
which actually, you bring up the name
prints for the art
Duval,
material so I can put that in
and
next time.
did Duval come out for the draft? Yeah,
Max ranked off.
that I want to say that sounds about right. Which I feel like Duval. I feel like if he would have played another year, Duval probably would have been a first round pick. Yeah, he definitely does. Yeah, he just doesn't have a shot. Which another year in college, you don't you might not necessarily develop the best shot in addition to your own college, but you just grow more accustomed to the game. Um, but yeah, no, that's interesting. And then the last trade to note of the from Minnesota of this 2K trade final special, whatever you want to call it, is Jimmy Butler in a second round 2019 pick for Bradley Beal in a 2021 first round pick. If I'm Minnesota, I'm taking this all day. If I'm Washington, if Jimmy Butler is committed, I think I would consider it heavily. Okay, I feel that. I feel it. Yeah, I feel that. Something to note though is Butler and Bradley Beal's stats were pretty similar last year. Um, Butler scoring 22.2 a game, Bradley Beal 22.6. Bradley's was on 46% shooting. Butler's was on 47, and they were within 2.5. They were within 2.5% of each other on 3-point shooting. So I feel like offensively, that conversation could be warranted. But I agree with you. I feel like Beal provides something that Butler doesn't, and that's spot up shooting. Because when I think of, because as much as Butler wants to, because as much as people try to tell me, I feel like Butler isn't a great spot up shooter. Which Bradley Beal, he can spot up at the corner, out on the basically anyone on the 3 point line, and with the lineup they have, that works out very well, with how the team is built, you know, for how Minnesota is built. I think Bradley Beal would be amazing fit on that team. Um, And I also like the idea of John Wall and Jimmy Butler in the same backcourt
It was good to talk to you, Mark.
because that would be scary.
I'll see you
Yeah,
guys tomorrow.
that'd be interesting. All right, so final consensus on the Jimmy Butler episode. Um, what do you think happens, Bill? Final consensus.
You don't have a midterm break, not like a 4 day weekend.
Yeah,
Oh, damn, that's weird.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
to the Clippers.
yeah, man. We'll see.
Yeah.
See you, Mark. I think I'm gonna be going as well. It's a little late.
Hmm.
I'll see you guys.
I like that. I like that. Um, I guess for my prediction, um, what I think happens is, um, I feel like the situation is able to be qualmed until the deadline, where Minnesota at that point just tries to get a young player plus a pick. So I think that Fournier deal might come in handy if that is actually available in real life. That happens at the deadline, and then Butler signs with the Knicks. I feel like that's what happens because I feel like Kyrie re-signs with the Celtics. So so and that's all the time we have for today. I'm Michael Perdomo, joined with Billy Webster III, and that was the Triple Threat Podcast. Who we didn't have the third person for the Triple Threat Podcast. Next week, we're gonna do something just more casual. We're gonna be playing the park. We're gonna try to get one of the park players that we're playing with to hop on. But all the motherfuckers are trash, so we don't want to play with any of them right away. So maybe until we find some good people, we'll do that. Alright, so take it easy, guys.